CTV News with Jackie Scantlebury.
Good afternoon. Technology and computer programs used to look into the far reaches of outer space are now being adapted for cancer research. Imaging equipment developed by researchers at the University of Lethbridge is currently functioning on the Herschel Space Observatory, but researchers say it can also be used to chase down rogue cancer cells deep inside the human body. Terry Vogt reports.
It's a partnership of two totally different sciences.
The ones that actually survive everything.
Resulting from a chance meeting between cancer biologist Roy Goldstein and physics astronomy researcher Dave Naylor, co-founder of the Institute for Space Imaging Science. Imaging equipment and software developed for the Herschel Space Observatory is now being used to help determine why some cancer cells are resistant to treatment.
And we know that we have cells that are cancer cells that are going to continue to grow, but we can't pick out which ones are going to do it. And that's the big problem in cancer treatment.
Cancer researchers say it would take years for technicians to painstakingly go through every sample, identify individual cells, and try to single out the ones that are somehow unique. It's a problem space researchers can associate with as they try to sort out different types of galaxies when confronted with a vast amount of data being returned by powerful new space telescopes.
It's almost image processing, sophisticated image processing to try and recognize a needle in a haystack.
But the same software being used to find an irregular galaxy in a whole field of millions of galaxies can also be used to find an irregular cancer cell among millions of cells.
So we know that difference is there in our petri dishes, but we can't see it ourselves as biologists. And our hope is, if we can pick that out, then we'd be able to help out doctors and improve treatment.
Scientists say this marriage between space technology and cancer research will lead to new discoveries. Just how far they'll be able to go and what they'll find, they don't know yet. But they say that's what research is all about. Terry Vogt, CTV News, Lethbridge.
U of L researchers have also been collaborating with another company and colleagues at the Foothills Hospital in Calgary to see if the imaging processes can work on breast cancer cells. Meanwhile, more southern Alberta pharmacies are joining a planned demonstration against government plans to slash the price it pays for generic drugs. 16 pharmacies in Lethbridge and surrounding communities are now planning to close their doors for several hours on Thursday to protest cuts by the Alberta government. Pharmacists say the changes, which are scheduled to go into effect May 1st, will reduce or eliminate rebates that pharmacies receive from drug companies. Now that means they'll have to start charging for some services that are currently free. They say the province should have consulted with drug manufacturers and pharmacists before making the changes.
We want to provide more services to patients, and we're starting to. And we also know that pharmacists providing chronic disease management can in turn save the government money. If we manage diseases properly and get them under control, we can in fact reduce drug utilization by patients in Alberta, and we can save money long term by managing those illnesses. We just have to be able to have the programs in place to do so.
That protest march is scheduled to start at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. As we mentioned, at least 16 pharmacies in the region will be closed for a couple of hours. Demonstrators are planning to walk from the chapter's parking lot at the Park Place Mall to the office of MLA Greg Whittock. Well, Lethbridge College and University students aren't the only ones in the province concerned about the government's cutbacks.
You are not a commodity, and your education should not be a debt sentence.
About 700 students at Mount Royal College in Calgary, or Mount Royal University rather in Calgary, took time away from class to protest recently announced cuts to post-secondary funding. Post-secondary schools were expecting a 2% increase in funding. Instead, got a 7% cut. After a brief rally at MRU, they marched to the Premier's constituency office, but Alison Redford, she wasn't there. She's in Washington, touting the Keystone Pipeline. Protesters say they're worried the cuts will eliminate some programs, increase class sizes, and generally devalue their education.
I personally feel that my program's going to be affected, and that worries me because it's going to mean when I come out of university, I'm going to have far less of a competitive degree to be able to go into graduate schools or to be able to work in various industries because of such factors.
Now, in fact, Mount Royal had to delay registrations for their fall semester while it figures out which classes are going to be chopped. Meanwhile, Advanced Minister for Education Thomas Lukaszuk is meeting this week with the presidents of Alberta's 26 public post-secondary schools to discuss the budget. Well, Dory, I see that you are also honoring the International Day of Pink to stop bullying of those who live alternative lifestyles.
Yep, truthfully. Yes, and it's important. It's important. Tolerance is a very big problem around the world, and whatever we can do to alleviate that in our community, we need to start doing that.
Thank you, Dory. More weather's coming up. A 52-year-old woman from Enchant is facing fraud charges after police say she defrauded social service agencies out of more than $90,000. Economics crimes officers say they became aware of the potential fraud in last October after a woman was suspected of falsely obtaining financial and medical support from a number of provincial agencies. Police now say that Judith Lechesky lied or exaggerated medical claims about conditions and bilked the government out of more than $91,000.
This one's a very difficult situation because I believe there is some legitimate funding that is required for this family. However, this has happened for such a long period and it's such a large amount that it's just so surmountable that police were involved.
Lechesky is scheduled to appear in court tomorrow morning. And we caught up with Alberta Human Services this afternoon. Their spokeswoman wouldn't go into specifics about the case or even how something like this could happen for so long. She says Human Services is there to provide support and funding for those who really need it.
Trust, and certainly it is a serious matter. The allegations haven't yet been proven, so it's really difficult to provide a sort of how do we feel about this at this point.
Just a few weeks ago, we told you how Money Sense magazine had ranked Lethbridge as one of the 10 best Canadian cities to live in. Well, now they've come out with the worst list, and another southern Alberta city has made that list, Brooks. But the reason may surprise you. Money Sense magazine says it has the worst doctor per person ratio in the country. There is one doctor per 2,273 people in Brooks, according to the magazine. Now, by comparison, there are 5 doctors for every 1,000 people in Cranbrook, BC, Canada's most densely populated city for MDs. We contacted Brooks Mayor Martin Shields, and his reaction was, I don't know where they get their info, as the population of the city is 13,500, and we have had 16 doctors, and this has been the case for a while. Doing that math, it works out to 1 doctor for every 843 people. If you're curious, the worst city overall was Lachute, Quebec. Call it silver separation or baby boomer divorce. Marriage breakups after the age of 45 are becoming quite a bit more common than they used to be. CTV's Joanne Schnur has more.
Cheryl Teeter and her husband would have celebrated their 40th anniversary this year. But 5 years ago, once her 2 boys were grown and gone, she left too.
The youngest one bought a house and moved out in March, and I moved out in April.
Divorce rates have doubled among couples over 50. High-profile couples too, like Al and Tipper Gore, Robin Williams and his wife, even Arnold and Maria. Unlike the 7-year itch, most of these divorces, though, are initiated by women, like Cheryl Teeter, financially secure and independent.
When you grow apart and you have nothing in common, there just wasn't any other reason to keep staying together in a place where, frankly, I think we were both unhappy, but I was unhappy enough to do something about it.
This divorce lawyer says the majority of his cases are people over 45.
The reality is that we have people now that are coming forward, and this is a common expression where they're talking about having had a successful relationship but a failed marriage.
The Vanier Institute of the Family says part of the decision to divorce after so many years is based on the fact we're living longer.
So you've got a little bit more time to think about what kind of companion do I want to have in those last 20 years of life? What kind of caregiving do I want to give, and what kind do I want to receive?
Teeter says her decision was years in the making, but when she finally decided to leave her marriage after 35 years, her husband was shocked.
I had no idea, thought it was just a bit of a middle-age crisis. In fact, actually his doctor told him it was, and I would settle down soon.
Cheryl Teeter has settled down, but into a single lifestyle, focused on work, surrounded by friends, and doing the things she wants to do.
Now, there is another growing trend as well. Couples who split, but they don't want to start all over, so they live in separate houses, but still consider themselves a couple. It's called LAT, living alone together. Time now for a look at the day's markets.